Hey, what's up guys? Hey, listen, I want to talk real quick about removing and pulling away the dash assembly away from the car so you can service the HVAC box, get to the heater core, get to the evaporator box, or do any kind of maintenance or even replace a squirrel cage here. A lot of people ask about how to do this. A lot of people are very intimidated on doing this. I want to show you, at least on an earlier car, how simple this is. Now, this is going to be extremely similar to your 87 and up. I'm just going to have little different variances in maybe some of the nut sizes and bolt sizes, and also some of the placements of the brackets, but the whole idea is the same. Now remember, Ford put these things in as one big piece. They were already pre-assembled. They slapped them in the car, screwed them down, hooked up the wiring, and was ready to go down the assembly line. So with that same concept in thought, we're going to be kind of reverse engineering this, and I've done this before, so I want to show you really how simple it is. Now the first thing you have to do on the Firewall side is remove these saucer bolts here. You've got these 7/16 little saucer nuts, okay? These two studs here, you got a stud there and one here. Both on this and on my 86 have these in the same spot, and this is what holds the whole HVAC box against the Firewall. Now if you're replacing the heater core, which I'm going to be doing just for preventative maintenance, and I'm also doing this so I can paint the Firewall and get all this out of the way, but I'm also swapping out my expansion valve here to a later model one, so it's not so big, bulky, and ugly, and has a later model Mustang or later model Fox with the dryer right here. So that's why I'm pulling this out right now, just to really get rid of this so I can prep and paint it. But yeah, you're going to make sure obviously your heater hoses are disconnected. You want to do that first. You're going to have a little bit of a mess, but get those disconnected. You don't necessarily have to remove the AC lines. It will pull back enough for you to replace the heater core if that's what you're doing. In my case, I'm actually removing this. So make sure you take these nuts off, and that will allow the box to actually slide backwards. Now let's talk about all the nuts and bolts necessary to pull this out. Now if you notice, I've got my blower assembly box removed. I did that because it makes it a little bit easier, and it's crazy easy to remove. Just remove the kick panel. There is a nut right here that goes to a bracket that goes to this bracket right here, if you can see that. So there's a 7/16 screw that goes into there, so remove this one. And on mine, I've got just one 7/16 nut on this stud, and this goes into the slot right here. Now on later ones you'll have two, so you could have two 7/16 nuts holding the studs in there. In that case, you just remove those three 7/16 nuts and screws and pull the assembly away from this section right here, like pull it out this way, and then it'll just pull down. You can pull it down. So make sure you move your kick panel, give you enough room, and then once this is out of the place, out of the way, you got a little bit more room to work. You can also see the bracket in the back here. That is that saucer nut that we removed on the Firewall. Okay, so now really all there is to do is just pull the dash away so we can get the assembly pulled out enough to get these off and to get the heater core, which is right up underneath this cover here. So clearly not gonna be able to get to this without dropping this box down. So that's what we're gonna be doing. Okay, let's talk about the dash. All right, on the bottom of the dash, you've got some 7/16 bolts. You've got one here and you've got one on the other side. Okay, so both of these need to be removed. You got a 7/16 nut going to this metal bracket here on the bottom of the dash. That needs to be removed. On the radio, ooh yeah, you've got a bracket right here. This is going to the frame of the car, and I know on later model Mustangs, this will be more of an L-shaped flat bracket going to the stereo unit. So this is an Allen bolt screw, believe it or not. So that will be removed, okay? So again, you've got this nut here. You got a 7/16 here, a 7/16 on that side, one in the center. You got this right here, and you've got one up above the steering column here. We have to drop the steering column to get to it. Now that's all the bolts you need to remove that will disconnect this whole entire dash from the car, at least on the bottom. On the top, now on the top, on mine, you've only got 5/16 screws. You got one here on each side of the stereo, or speakers. I've got one in the center right there, and I've got two on the adjacent side is here. So all 5 of those will be removed, and that's the only thing holding up the top of this to the top of the car. Later model Mustangs, at least on my 86, I had a bracket, like a U-shaped bracket that went around here, and I also had to remove the two here. There's a screw here, here, and there. So I removed all 3 of these to get the dash to pull out. So really, that's it. So you got 5/16 on the top. For me, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 7/16 screws on the bottom. While they drop the steering column to get to one of them, and you've got the bracket up against the radio. Okay, so Now on my 86, these were not actually 5/16 nuts. They were Phillips head screws, and I had to use one of those little angle screwdrivers to get here because it's so close to the windshield. This makes it quite a bit easier, I think. So if it was me and I did this again, I would actually replace those Phillips head screws with these. But what we're going to do is remove all of these 5/16 little nuts. Like I said, there's one on each side here. Hey, bud. What are you doing? Okay.
Come out to see what you're doing.
Okay, so we got 2 there. We're going to move this one in the center. Okay. All right, now we'll move the 2 on this side. Okay, with just those 5 removed on the top, you can see the front is pretty much ready to, the top of it's completely disconnected. So now, just removing the bottom bolts, and this thing should come right out. Okay, so we'll get that bottom one down here now. Okay. Now we'll get the other side. So we're gonna go ahead and drop the steering column now. The steering column's gotta be dropped down so we can get to that last bolt. To do that, there's 2 on the back here. And it doesn't have to come all the way out. We should just be able to drop it down. So lower those like this, and then Connor will have one right here where the hood latch bracket's on. Can't see it. There's one of them.
There's one. And there's 2.
There's 2. Drop it down, and then get the actual steering column bolts here. There we go.
Hey, Dad.
Okay, it's gonna come down. There we go. Okay, one thing I should have mentioned is remove your fuse box cover so you don't break it here. Because what I'm doing is putting a lot of pressure on this piece of plastic. You don't want to break it, man. This stuff's old.
Yeah, it's
Old and brittle. And so this is in way better shape than my other one. I'm gonna put these screws back, Connor, so you don't lose them. Okay, so get a 3/8 back here.
very uncomfortable position.
Yeah. Okay, so that's out just like this. Now the only thing we're going to be using is a T27 here. T27 on the bottom of the stereo bracket. And Connor, I think that's it, buddy. This it should just fall down. All right, so all the bolts have been removed. This should pull out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's it. So there's 5/16 bolts up here. There was 2. I was wrong about the 7/16 back there. So 3 7/16s. One here, one underneath the glove box, one on the other corner, and then there was a T27 screw up against the stereo right here, and there was a 3/8 screw above the steering column. And when the steering column dropped, that's it. So we are removed, Connor. All right, depending on your HVAC box and your situation, you may want to disconnect some things. I went ahead and removed the cable, which is, let's see here. I removed the cable right here. So this is for your blend door and the electrical connection here. And you probably want to remove your plug here for your vacuum without breaking it, hopefully. Okay, I need 2 hands for that. But I went ahead and removed the bracket right here, and that goes up against the firewall. Okay, that kind of cradles your HVAC box, no big deal. And then we'll just remove the bracket right here. We'll move this guy right here, and then that should drop the HVAC box right down. Okay. All right. It's free. Now there was a screw on the back side right here that I didn't see. I was able to unscrew this from the back of the car, but it was basically right there. So now that's removed. I was able to finagle the dash. Nothing's been disconnected on the dashboard. This was pulled out a little bit, and it could be unclipped here if you wanted to. But the 79 is just so much easier. There's just so little electronics compared to later model ones. But man, this is it. Make some room for this wire here, and we'll get the HVAC box out. That way we can service it. All right, I got some audio problems, so I have to overdub this. But man, check it out how easy it was to get that box completely out. And guys, this is the right way to do it because now you can properly service it. It's super easy. Now you just take off the 5 screws on top of this box on the top here. These 5/16 screws, and then you can remove the lid to replace the heater core. And you don't have to hack into it. You don't have to cut it up. But now's a good time to replace the seals. Make sure everything is nice and airtight. It'll force more air through your vents and have less leakage in the box itself. So it's a good time to inspect it and repair that kind of stuff while you got it out like this. So easily you could take off the lid, replace the heater core, or in my case, we're going to actually split the entire case in half, take the screws out from the sides, flip it over. It's like a clamshell basically. We're going to flip it over and go ahead and remove the entire evaporator box and replace it with one from like an 87 and up Mustang. So that will get rid of the ugly eyesore that is the big expansion valve block that is on the 79. Even though it is property of this car, we're going to replace it with a later model from like an 87 to 93 Fox. And then that way it'll just be a little bit easier to adapt to the EcoBoost. But you can see here I've got everything cleaned up and ready now for paint prep on the Firewall while it's out. And again, guys, that's the right way to do it. It's not the wrong way, and you can see it literally took me about 30-40 minutes here to do this entire thing. Next day, I know it looks like a total mess right now, but trust me, it's not that bad. I've went ahead and separated this just to make sure I can get it out. The heater core box is back there. Like I said, it's just a lid. Heater core simply lays in this area here. Pull it out, and that's it. To remove the box, there's a bunch of screws you have to move around the side, and then there's some of the clips that you have to, simply snap off, unclip. And then the hardest part was disconnecting the vacuum diaphragm actuator off of this, which isn't that hard. You could do it with the lid on. When the lid's completely down, just get some pliers. There's a little rubber O-ring here, and then just kind of snip it off. But you can see mine needs to be cleaned up anyways. But once the actuator is removed from this arm, the whole box will lift up just like this. And then now you can see here is the big AC evaporator. Now, there's a good thing, actually I don't really want to touch this because it's a good thing I am replacing this because it's still got some mouse crap in it from last time. See right there. So really it's a good thing. I mean, once we get the AC working, I don't want to smell that. You definitely don't want to be breathing that. So it's a good thing we're replacing this anyway. So I went ahead and ordered a new one. The seal is going to have to be altered, or I'm going to see if they have to find a seal because the seal is going to be different because the lines are going to come out, like this instead of like this. So that does change the lines a little bit. But like I said, it gets rid of this thing because this sticks out in front of the Firewall. Otherwise, everything else should be the same. And if I run into any problems, I've never done this before, swapping evaporators from different years. But if I've run into any problems, I'll let y'all know. And yeah, and I'll keep you informed. I think it's going to be the same though. The opening here looks the same, at least from pictures, from what I can tell. But again, yeah, this is the bolt I forgot to tell you about in the video. I don't want to forget this one here. Okay, so this is actually right there. So you just kind of snake in and undo it. Like I said, I undid it from the Firewall side, and I actually did. This was already pretty loose. I took some pliers on the back of the nut here, unscrewed it a couple times, and it came right off. So yeah, that's simple, man. Here's the heater core. My heater core is actually good. It's the copper one. It looks good. It's not leaking. Well, it's leaking on my floor, but it's not leaking. And we're going to replace it just for preventative maintenance. I did notice that they were getting kind of loose, wiggly, and you want to be careful when you're removing your hoses not to bend these because, guys, these are soldered in, and you can break the welds in them. And I'm getting coolant everywhere. And also, one thing to make note is not to lose this, okay? In your bigger line, you've got a restrictor. Okay, if you lose this, LMR makes them, or RMPD. You can get these things from anywhere. That goes in line, but I like this one because it goes in the heater hose inlet itself. Otherwise, you get too much pressure in it, and it makes for a short life of your heater core. But that is it. I know it's a mess. The dash is in really good shape. The car is going to come together soon, I promise. It's more of a mess right now. Things are always going to get worse before they get better. But I want to get the HVAC box fixed. Like I said, for a couple reasons. We can put it back in place. We'll update the AC in it, put a new heater core in it, and it lets me now get all this paint off here so I can prep and paint the Firewall, okay? Once that's done, we'll get the unit back in the car, button the dash all back up, and then get everything just kind of tidied up and continuing work on Project EcoBoost here. So listen, next time you'll see this, we'll be dropping the K member, getting rid of the K-member completely, finishing up the body work. I've got to do, you know, some Bondo work here, some body filler on the back of the firewall up there, and also along the Scott rod panels. And then we're going to epoxy coat the entire front end of this car. You can see I went ahead and filled in the hole to the wiper, since the wiper's been relocated here. If you haven't seen that video, go back and watch it. So that's been relocated. The wiper still works. Haven't figured out washer yet. I don't know if I'm going to mess with the washer fluid, but yeah, we're going to put a little bit of filler on here, make sure that's nice and smooth. That is some really thick steel. All the holes have been finally filled up here, so that's really good. The black you see is rust protectant. I went ahead and put some of this KBS coats on the areas that were kind of getting, you know, surface rusty, and I just wanted to put extra protection on it before we epoxy coat it. So, tire K-member will be gone. We're going to be bolting up an awesome AJE suspension. I'm going to show that. It's going to look, we're going to go all through it, man. So AJE is nice enough to send me their unit along with some their A-arms for traditional coil springs and for coilovers. So we'll go over that as well. It's going to be awesome. So stay tuned for more on Project Eagle Brews. It's happening. It's slowly, but it's surely. It's happening. Take care.